I'm here today to bring you my 3-month owner review of the 2018 Chevy Bolt. And note that is Bolt with a B, not a Volt. The Bolt is Chevy's all-electric offering in the EV world, and this is the second year model that this has been out. I'm here just to give you a high-level overview of what it's been like and what are some of the features of this car for the last 3 months, and how I use it on a daily, day-to-day basis. So without further ado, here we are. There's some things to point out here. There are different options that you can get on this vehicle. One of those options being what's called DC fast charging. Now, if you look here, there is a charging port similar to what you would have on an ICE vehicle's gas tank. This is where you charge the car. All Bolts come with the first connector that you see on the top. Only those with DC fast charging option come with this on the bottom. This will be closed off and capped if you do not have the option. This will have a orange cover here if you do have the DC fast charging option. When you charge normally, you will notice that you will only use this top portion on a level 1 or a level 2 charger. When you're using DC fast charge, there are more volts coming into the car via DC instead of AC, in which case the bottom ports will be used and the connector will be a larger connector. These are used on stations such as EV Go stations, which is the only fast charger I have around me currently. Also going around the car, you'll notice the rims that come with it, which are very nice. These are included stock rims that come with the car. They look pretty decent for stock rims, I think. You'll notice the unlocking and locking of the door with the keyless entry was done via this button right here. You would notice the antenna on top of the car used for the satellite radio. One thing that I've done to this car is I've put some vinyl tape on the Chevy symbol in blue because I like the way it looked. It's not a good long-term plan. It is peeling off already, but it gives a nice pop and is pretty close to the blue lettering on the back of the car. And here's another walk around the car. So for being an electric vehicle, it's actually a pretty decent looking car, I think. Other than a Tesla, I think it's probably the best looking EV out there, being all electric. The Tesla Model 3 does look darn good, I think, but I think this looks a lot better than the Nissan Leaf, certainly the first generation Leaf, and better than the newer Leaf also. I'm going to give you a look into the back of the car to give you an idea of what the storage is like. It's a hatchback, and you'll notice it's got a good amount of space. It's not a huge hatch area, but I left my jogging stroller in here. I have 2 children that I drive around this car on a daily basis, and so I just wanted to leave that stroller in there to give you an idea of how easy it is to put a pretty big stroller in and out of the car. And then the other thing I wanted to show you was what comes in the car. If you open this up, you'll see there's this divider, and then underneath is the storage area where there is no spare tire. And this is something a lot of new manufacturers are doing now to keep weight down and cost on the car, as they don't put a spare tire in it. And so this comes with a little bit of area, something for a tow connector, and the included charger. This is a level 1 charger, which can be used as a level 2 charger at 12 amps, I believe, if you get the right adapter. But out of the box, what comes with the car is a level 1 charger that'll work on any 110 volt circuit. And a note with that is that will charge very slow at about 3 miles per hour of charge. So if you need to charge quickly, you need to use a level 2 charger on your car. Now, going to the interior of the car. You will notice it has a gray and white trim on the dashboard. One thing I'm going to get into as one of the negatives in the car is the seat. There's your standard button functions on the car, such as your window tilt, mirror tilt, directional for the mirror tilt, window lock, automatic window, up and down for each one, your door locks. Coming into the car and starting it up, you'll put your foot on the brake and push this power button right here. It is a keyless system, so you no need to put the actual physical key in the car. And then you will notice it start up. One of the first things that you should pay attention to is what people refer to as the GOM or guessometer. This is the approximate charge that you have on the EV to go before you run out. There's a lot of factors that go into play with an EV. It's not as simple as most ICE vehicles, where in an ICE vehicle you don't really know what affects your mileage that quickly. You don't have instant feedback. With the new EVs that are out now, you will notice that when you do something that's going to use more of your battery's charge and shorten the distance that you can go, this responds pretty quickly to show you that. And it's pretty eye-opening at first. It's something to get used to when you own an EV, because you have to worry a little more and plan out your routes versus an ICE vehicle where there's a lot of gas stations around and it only takes a few minutes to fill your gas tank up. With an electric vehicle, you have to plan ahead and change the way you think about traveling and where you're going to go. You have to really plan out these things, because it takes, even with a fast charger, it takes a good 45 minutes to fill most of your battery up with a fast charger, and up to 9 hours probably on a level 2 charger. At 110 volt, it could take a few days to actually go from empty pretty much all the way up to the top. Now, I want to show you this. It's hot as heck outside. It's 73 degrees but sunny, and it's steaming in this car. I wanted to show you this on purpose. I'm going to turn the air conditioning system on, and then now you're going to see that mileage dropped. So instantly the guessometer will dropped and readjusted what it considers to be the new range that you have. If you're going to be running your air conditioner while you're driving the car normally, you will see that. You'll also see over here the radio setup configuration. If you push this energy button, you get a lot of useful information on the screen to show you. Here's how I've been driving, my scores, which you can see. Climate settings: when it's hot out, I put the air on. I'm not trying to hyper mile. I've done that before, but I'm not trying to do it, so I don't really care about that. This battery conditioning is interesting. This is something that the car will do to the battery to run coolant through it to keep it from getting too hot. It's something that the Nissan Leaf, I do not believe, has currently on the 2018 year model. I believe next year's Leaf is getting that. Driving accessories, so how I'm driving the car, what accessories I'm plugging in, such as my cell phone, and how much juice that's taking. The climate settings would be my air conditioner currently, or my heat if it was the winter time. How much energy that I've used since my last charge, and the distance traveled since the last full charge of my car. And if I go also through the last menu, this shows in my last 5 miles what kind of efficiency am I getting out of my vehicle as far as miles per kilowatt. My average is usually in the warm weather around 4.5 miles per kilowatt. I know there's people on the left coast and other warmer climates which are getting way above 5. In the wintertime, I get about 3.5 miles per kilowatt because I'm using my heat, and also a battery does not maintain its charge as well in the colder climate. You can turn the air conditioner on and off via this screen. If there's one thing, a couple of things I wish this car had differently would be physical buttons for the AC, so I don't have to wait for the screen to come on to change my climate. But generally speaking, this screen is amazing. It's one of the best responsive screens I've used. It's very easy to figure out. I can easily change my source to go back and forth from FM to AM to satellite radio to USB input and my phone. It also has Apple Carplay, which I can show you at a later time, which is very useful. There's no included navigation in this car. Some of the buttons that you have your hazard lights, sport mode, which really just means a more responsive accelerator, traction control on or off. I just leave it on all the time, which is the default setting. These are your climate controls, defroster, max defrost. Home will change the screen to go back to the home. If I drill into the audio screen here and then I push the home button, you'll see it go back to that initial screen, which can be configured and changed around. You can see I can make this bigger or smaller to show you different parts of the screen. There's a lot of useful information here. I'm not going to get into all of it at this time, but I'm very happy with the layout of the controls. If you look at the steering wheel, you will see there is cruise control settings right here. I have what is called the two extra packages I paid for. One is the comfort and convenience package, which includes a heated steering wheel and also includes heated seats. You can see these settings here. I can turn my driver's heated seat on and off. It has 3 levels to it. I don't know if you can see those red dots, but it's more hot, less hot, the least amount of heat applied. So that also has that on the driver and passenger side. Also, if you look at my mirror here, there is a light on the left side of the mirror, which I'll include an image of later, which is included in my driver's confidence package, which includes blind spot warning on my mirror. So both of the mirrors have this little icon on the mirror itself, which will light up yellow when there's somebody in your blind spot on that side of your vehicle. This is very useful. I love this feature because there's no thinking on part of the note somebody in my blind spot. I just look at the light is on, there's somebody in my blind spot. It is also on the passenger side mirror. This is great because in other cars, such as my Honda Accord Touring, there's only you turn the right turn signal on and the screen will show video of what's in your passenger's side blind spot only. In this car, I have a very quick indicator. I don't even have to, my brain doesn't have to process anything. The light is either on or off, and it is very useful in telling me if somebody's in my blind spot. The other thing that this car has is if I put it into reverse, I have the driver's confidence package includes cross traffic alert system. So that means when I'm backing up, it's going to warn me that there's something behind me and something might could be coming from either side of my car. So this is your standard warning when I'm backing up that shows me, hey, there's something behind you, I'm going to beep within your little grid line there. With the driver's confidence package, I also get side-by-side warnings if a car is coming from either side while I'm backing up, which is a very useful feature. That was also an add-on to my package. Now I'm going to get into just a few things that I find to be negatives about this car, and I'll show that to you now. If I get out of this car, I'm going to show you the seat. The seat is the worst thing about the car, I will say. A couple things to point out. I'm going to notice there is a aftermarket pad I have on the seat, and the width, if you were to put a measuring tape here on this seat, you will notice that this is about 28 inches wide, right? And I'm only 5'8" with a 32-inch waist, and would be considered a smaller guy. And this seat is the worst seat I've ever sat in a car. When I took the test drive, I didn't really notice a problem. But when I sit in this seat personally for more than 40 minutes at a time, I get a dead leg in my thigh, and that's due to the poor padding in this seat. They have it kind of shaped like a bucket seat, but the padding is so terrible and so thin that the frame underneath the seat digs into your leg. And you can see it's plastic here, and there's bolts that actually stick out underneath here that dig in your the padding and push up into your leg as you're driving. Another thing that's weird is this kind of dips down. There's just not enough foam under here, and there's not enough support in the seat. I did another video where you can see me adding some foam, rigid foam underneath the seat to try and make it better. That did not work. I took that out. And now I found, for now, because I don't want to spend a ton of money, I just have an aftermarket seat pad that works for me. It has helped a lot. And really the seat is just, Chevy didn't put a lot of money or thought into the seat. Obviously, they didn't have anybody doing a long-term test drive. They didn't care to change it. It is what it is. It's the biggest negative of the whole car for me. I am thinking about getting it reupholstered, so something to take into account is there's some people that say their seats are fine on this car. There's plenty of forums out there, you can read about it. Me personally, I may buck up and just get my two seats reupholstered with better padding underneath, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do that yet. So that's something to think about if you're thinking about this car. You might want to budget for a reupholster job, which I'm sure could cost a few $100s at a minimum. Now I'm going to come into the rear seat here. This is pretty vanilla, not much going on. It is very roomy. If there's one thing that I've noticed when I was comparing this car to the Chevy Volt, when I was looking at a Volt, the Volt has a large transmission area here where it comes up through. I don't know if it's the transmission in that car or not, but it's similar to that old school hump that you would have for the transmission, old cars, for rear-wheel drive cars. So that took a lot of room here, and there's a lot less room in the Volt than there is this Bolt. I'm only 5'8", so you can see there's a lot of room here. Any adult can fit in here. 2 adults can fit very easily. I normally have 2 child seats in the back of my car, so I have a child seat and a booster seat for my 2 children that are in here every day, and they have plenty of room. Also, the front is very roomy. My father-in-law is 6'3". He had no problem sitting in his car at all, with plenty of room to spare in the back. The other negative in this car, if I go over it real quick, I would say is the fact that there's no built-in GPS, which is not a huge negative. It's just some people might consider that a negative. The fact that some of these controls for climate control are on the screen and not physical buttons is a little annoying, because you know, sometimes the screen will do weird things every once in a while in any car, and I just want to turn the air conditioner on immediately or turn it off. I don't want to deal with that. It's not really a big deal because it works. You just have, it's, you know, if you're impatient like I am sometimes, you have to wait a few seconds for the screen to come on. That's the majority of the negative. I don't really have a lot to complain about this car. They don't have a sunroof in it. If you pay for the Premier trim level, you will get leather seats. This comes with cloth seats, which look okay. Like I said, very uncomfortable in the front for me personally. The back ones are actually pretty comfy. They're not upholstered the same way. It's kind of more flat and more cushioning underneath it and more structure to the seat. It might not be more cushioning, but there is more structure to the seat. And so it actually makes for a better ride. It's more flat and less dippy than it is here. So it makes it pretty comfy in the back. It is very roomy for how small the car is. There's a lot of headroom in here. I love that. And the visibility is top notch. If you look out the window, there's a huge window that slopes down, similar to what you'll get in like a minivan, and there's little cutouts here. There's a little bit of a blind spot here, but when you're in turns, you notice it a tiny bit, but the visibility all across this dash and out that window is just awesome. It's very awesome. The cabin, the ceiling is very tall, which gives you a great feel. You don't feel like you're closed in at all. So that is awesome. Another couple things here to show you. This is a menu which will control the menu that you see up there. And so if you hit it, you can scroll through. If I hit over, you can see there's some things to see. Vehicle information, audio controls. You can change this to do a myriad of different options for what you see on this screen in your control center right there in front of your steering wheel. So if you want to see phone information, OnStar, you click into it. It tells me my iPhone's connected. I can go to the right. I can see contacts. And so each menu gives different options. I tend to stay just with the default vehicle options, which is shows me information about what kind of energy I'm using currently, and the regen. Over on the bottom here, you see there's a favorites toggle. These are physical buttons that allow you to go through the favorites in your radio. Awesome, awesome control. I use this every single day. I just tap up or down. It goes through my favorites that I have saved in my radio, and I don't have to look at the screen at all. This could be something that you might see as a pro over a Tesla. I don't have the Model 3. I haven't driven it. It looks amazing. I would love to have a Tesla, but one thing I can see myself wanting is physical buttons that are dedicated to certain options, so I don't have to take my eyes off the road and I can just feel for them. Another thing, there is a brake paddle on the back of the wheel here, the steering column. This does regenerative braking for the motor. It's something that is awesome in this car. I will show you as I'm driving a little bit later about how you drive the car. You can use regenerative braking. Another thing to point out is these two buttons on the side here. These are volume up and down buttons for your volume control. Chevy did an amazing job with laying out this steering wheel, so I don't have to look at a screen to figure any of this stuff out. I have my windshield wipers, my turn signal, which is normal in every car, my cruise control, my heated steering wheel, my voice command button, my phone disconnect button, my navigation for my menus that I showed you earlier, the favorite buttons, and the volume controls. These are all the most used options when you're driving the car. So it's awesome that I don't have to look at my screen to go through and find all these things and take my eyes off the road. I love that I just feel for it. It's tactile. It gives me instantaneous feedback because of the way the buttons are made. And I use it every single day, multiple times as I'm driving. So that is the basic overview. You'll see up here there is OnStar. OnStar comes with a car with a trial. Make sure that you do not give them your credit card when you get the car. The salesman will set you up and talk to the OnStar person when you get the car to set up your account. Just tell them, I do not want to give you a credit card, and you still get the trial. And when the trial ends, you still get to keep most of the features that allow your app on your phone to connect to the car, which have keyless entry, and some other options. I'll show you the app in a tiny bit on my phone. So that's it. I'm going to get into actually driving the car, and I want to talk to you about some stuff as I'm driving the car. Okay, now I'm going to get into actually driving the car. You're not going to be able to see super close of everything, so I wanted you to kind of see me as I was talking to you. Something that is pretty cool about this car is there are two different types of drive modes you can use. One is D, as you'll be normal, no different than any other car. You put it in drive, you put your foot on the accelerator, it's going, you take your foot off, it coasts until you hit the brake. With this car, there's also another mode that is called L mode. You put it in this mode, and when your foot comes off the accelerator and eases off, it'll automatically apply the regenerative braking system. So I drive in that every single day. So it gives you a feel that is really connected to the car, and it really makes me feel like I'm driving a manual transmission. There's only one gear in this car. It's like a direct drive system where the drive goes through the engine, and there's one large gear that is turned with a pretty good gear ratio that Chevy determined to be by a lot of testing. And what it allows for is instant torque off the line. This car is very surprising when it comes to driving off the line. I'll tell you in a second here. I'll do a little 0 to 60 test, and I'm going to go for a little drive right now while I'm talking. So I always keep my car in the L mode, and it really just personal preference. I want to be able to regenerate that energy and get it back to my battery whenever I'm not accelerating. And the other thing is, it's not going to use brake at all unless you push the brake. So I will use the L mode all the time when I'm driving, and I rarely use my brake. And what that does is it saves on my brake pads. My brake pads are not going to have to be changed for a really long time. The other thing is it gives you a feel like a manual transmission. It's almost like you're always downshifting into the correct gear. So I'm going to give it a little go here. I'm going 20 miles an hour. I'm going to punch it. And now I am up to 60. So you can see how quick that was on the video. To go from 20 to 60 the instant torque and the acceleration is immediate in this car, and you're going to get that with most electric cars. This car is a little quicker than the Leaf, and obviously the Teslas are going to blow this out of the water probably. But the thing that's interesting is, if you look at the 0 to 60 time, it's 6 point something odd seconds. That's as fast as like a 1985 Ford Mustang. So, you know, technology's come a long way, and the fact that the weight on this car is so low because of the battery going across the whole bottom of the car, and the fact that it's an electric car means the torque is immediate. So stuff that you had to work really hard on your other cars, your GTIs and your Honda Civics, dumping all this money into them, you get out of the box with this car, and it really is amazing to drive. I did not think it was going to be this fun to drive, and I was initially sold on a Chevy Volt until I went and sat in one at a car show, and it just seemed really compressed and small. I was scared about the range, but after I joined a Facebook group, which is called, I believe it's called Chevy Bolt Owners. You know, I kept an eye on all the owners talking about this vehicle for like a month or two, and they all sold me on this car. So I went and took a test drive. I pretty much dedicated to buying it before I took a test drive, which is a big no-no. I didn't pay me anything, but I went down to Maryland to get a good deal, and you just don't see good deals for these things on the East Coast in Pennsylvania. Because Pennsylvania is so far behind the times with EV and that really renewable energy and giving credits to the companies to sell these cars, you have to go elsewhere, unfortunately, for Pennsylvania. And you know, I drove to Maryland. I got $3,000 lower than any deal I was getting in PA, and it was worth a 2-hour drive for me. So right now I'm slowing down, and I am just not using brakes whatsoever. So I just came to a stop without even using the brakes, just using the L mode on my car. Now, the paddle on the side of my car that I was showing you on the steering wheel, you can keep it in drive mode, and you can push that paddle down, and that will give you the same regenerative braking that you would get if you had an L mode. If you do both of them, it actually applies more regenerative braking. There'll be more friction applied by the motor braking to your car. It will slow you down even quicker. And that's cool if you're going to a turn, you want to apply a little more braking. You're braking with your hand, and if you really need to brake quicker, you just apply the actual physical brake. It'll apply the brake pads to the car. It's just really fun to drive. It's feel like you're really connected to the ground in this car. It gives you sort of like a pseudo race feel. I attribute that to, one, being the torque, and two, the weight being so low in this car really keeps you connected to the ground. So the handling, it feels really nice. A couple things to point out: the tires are low resistance rolling tires, which means you're not going to get a ton of grip on the road. So if you're used to driving a motorcycle with nice tires, or you know, a car where you put aftermarket tires on it to give you like Pirellis or something that are going to give you really good grip, you're going to have to go buck up some money, put some other tires in the car. But that's going to hurt you with the mileage you get, because these tires are designed to give you low resistance so you get more mileage out of your roll, and that's done on purpose. So it's not for best performance and handling, it's meant to be for getting you more mileage out of your charge. That's really what Chevy focused on a lot here, is giving you more mileage out of your charge. So it's a sacrifice of a little bit of performance and handling in order for giving you better range. So let's see, I'm going to come to a stop up here, and I'll do a little 0 to 60 action. I'm going to tell you when I hit it, and then you can decide for yourself. I'm stopped, and I'm going. I'm applying the gas, or accelerator, sorry. And I am up to 60. So we can review that on the video, see how long that took. I got a little chirp there. I also did a no-no in the EV world. You know, I said give it the gas. It's the accelerator, not the gas, because there is no gas in the car. But the car is very quick. If you have other people in the car and you have a lot of luggage and cargo, it's not going to go as fast. It's just, you know, the car is not big. If there's only one person in the car, and I only weigh 155 pounds, so, you know, it's going to go pretty good with me in the car. If you weigh 300 pounds, then, you know, it's not going to go as great. I packed up and did a long road trip a couple weeks ago. It was roughly a 70-mile trip, and there was a lot of traffic. And this car at a full charge gets you around 230 miles of range. There's a lot of factors. Your driving habits. There's a lot of things you get used to in an electric vehicle that are going to affect your range. How fast you're pushing the accelerator constantly. The temperatures outside. Batteries are greatly affected by the temperature extremes. It's very, very hot in the desert. It's going to affect your range. The coolant system is going to kick on. It's going to take some of your battery in order to run the coolant constantly through the battery. If you're in a very cold climate, we're in the 20s here in most of the winter time, so my battery is going to not hold a charge as great. If I'm running my air conditioner, as I showed you earlier, my range, if I turn the air conditioner on, it's going to drop 10 miles off the range it's estimating. If you plug in accessories, you're charging phones, you have a lot of extra stuff that you're running off the battery, it's going to take away from the range. So there's certain things you gotta get used to, and you have to keep in mind, because with electric vehicle, you have to plan how far you're going and where you're going to charge at. If you know, okay, I've got to go 100 miles. If I'm driving in traffic and I have a lot of stuff in my car, I had to go 70 miles. I had a full car packed up. There was 4 people in my car. I had my 2 children. I had me and my wife in the car. By the time I got to my destination, I had roughly 100 miles left in my range, and I had a full charge before I left. So I had to plug into the 110 volt outlet at my destination and let it charge overnight, and it gave me enough to get back. So, but the thing to take into account, if you don't have a level 2 charger, or you don't have a fast charger where you're going, or if you don't have a fast charger on your car, you really have to take this into account. You have to make sure you're staying somewhere for long enough for you to get the range charged back into the battery for you to get back to where you got to go. It's a lot different, because there's not a lot of charging stations, especially on the East Coast. The West Coast has a lot of charging stations. The East Coast is very far behind, especially around the Philadelphia and southern Jersey area. So I have to keep that into account. When I go home, I installed a level 2 charger. I will show you that towards the end of the video, and I will go over that as well. So hopefully, the handling is very awesome in this car. There's a lot of stuff that just blew me away by driving this car. And, I was not expecting a Chevy to be that make a car this good, but it blew me away. I'm a converted Honda guy normally, because I bought a Honda Pilot and I bought a Honda Accord. I was coming from a BMW 528 for my wife, which was just costing me, $1,200 to get the oil change and, swap out the brake fluid in the car. And all the little things BMW does where they nickel and dime you, and you end up paying a ton of money. So, it was fun to drive the car, but guess what? It's fun to drive this car. And it does not look as cool as a BMW, but it handles amazing. It's very, very fast off the line. If you're racing somebody and they got a hooked up V8, or they got turbo on their BMW and they're driving an M series BMW or something, they're going to beat you, right? But when you punch it off the line, you might beat them. I was next to cars where I was surprised at how fast I was off the line in comparison to them. So I'll try and give you a shot up here after my next stop of the jump that this thing really gets off the line. So stay tuned, and I'll be right back. Okay, everybody, I'm going to try and give you a little 0 to 60 action here. Something else I wanted to point out right now is the use of Apple CarPlay in your car. If you look in the car, there are two USB inputs here and here. I hook my phone up, I drop it in that console, and then Apple CarPlay will come up. If you have an iPhone or an iOS device, Android Auto also works in this car. So this car does not come with any navigation, but it does have Apple CarPlay available. I will say Apple CarPlay itself, which has nothing to do with Chevy, has a terrible maps. Apple Maps blows compared to Google Maps, in my opinion. So I actually have tried Android Auto on here with the map feature, and it works awesome. There is a glitch in the system with Android Auto where the favorites controls stop working when I have Android Auto on, where that does not happen with Apple CarPlay. Some of the features with Apple CarPlay, you can look up online for videos around Apple CarPlay, but it is very nice to be able to have hands-free usage of a lot of these features. If I want to text somebody or hear a text message, you can hit that button. It'll ask me who I want to text.
To whom should I send your message?
Amy.
Which Amy? Amy or Mom? Amy.
Amy.
Which Amy? Amy or Mom?
So you get some
Which
weird
Amy?
stuff that goes
Amy
like that.
Or Mom? Amy.
So
What do you want to say?
I'll just cancel out of that. The Maps feature will come up. You can speak to it. The Apple CarPlay voice recognition is not the best, so it's a little annoying. But the fact that you get integrated maps, the screen is very awesome for directions. I do like Android Auto better for the maps. For the rest of the stuff, this works okay though. There's a lot of apps available here. You can see there's Amazon Music, Pandora, podcast app, all the stuff a lot of stuff that's on your phone. If it's a Apple CarPlay compatible app, it'll show on the screen for you to use it. So that's a very nice feature. In closing, I guess what I would say was, this car is very surprising to me. It's performed way better than my expectations were. If you're looking for an electric vehicle, look in your state for state incentives. In Pennsylvania, I had a rebate of $1,750, so $1,750. That was limited to the first 500 applicants. So look into your state to see if you have any available benefits or something that's going to get you money back for a car. I'm also going to get back the $7,500 federal tax credit. Something to note, you have to owe at least $7,500 in taxes for the year in order to get that back. Some people are surprised when they go to file for taxes and somehow they have enough money to buy one of these things and they don't owe at least $7,500 for the year in taxes. Not owe when you file your taxes, but throughout the year, if you had to pay the federal government $7,500, you'll get $7,500 back if you paid them $7,500. If you only paid $3,000 in taxes, federal taxes for the year, and that's all you owed, then you only get $3,000 back. There's something to note about how federal tax credits work in general, so note that. I personally shopped around a lot. In Pennsylvania, there's hardly any good deals on electric vehicles, for Chevy Bolt, I'll say. It has to do with Pennsylvania itself and how they handle incentives. There's no incentives from the state of Pennsylvania going back to GM and these dealers, so they're not going to give that in return to you as a consumer. So New Jersey has a great incentive. No federal tax, or no state tax, rather, on electric vehicles if you buy an all-electric vehicle. Maryland has great incentives. I actually bought this car in Maryland. I drove 2 hours down to Maryland to a dealer because it saved me $3,000. So the other thing is that also applies to leases. In Pennsylvania, you do not get good lease deals on Chevy Bolts. I've heard of people paying a little over $200 a month for a lease with 12,000 miles a year for a 3-year lease. Me personally, the best deal I was offered was like around $320 for 2017 model year. And then once the 2017 model year goes away, you have to then try and get 2018. Each new year that comes out, they have a cutoff where they'll no longer offer a lease on the previous year model. So there's a sweet spot there with leases
it was like, for me, I think February was when they stopped. February was the last month that you could get a really good lease deal in a 2017. In March, they stopped with the 2017 leases, so then the price jumped. So look around, the end of the year or the beginning of the next model year, the next calendar year, to get a good lease deal. Maryland, New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, all have really good incentives to the state that transfer back to the people who live in those states. So I did not get a good deal for leasing because you have to live in that region of that GM dealer for the states that give good incentives. So since I could not get a good lease deal, I had to purchase in order to make the most out of my money. So I had to front the cost in order for me to get my savings return. So what I got was, I drove to Maryland, I paid $34,000 roughly before taxes on this vehicle. This was an LT model. I got the driver's confidence package, and I also got the package that comes with the heated steering wheel and the heated seats. So that is thousands more than if you get the base LT trim. But those are things that I really wanted. It's also costs you an extra $750, I believe, for the DC fast charging option. So if you want to be able to ever stop at an EV Go station and do a fast charge to get you up to 80% or more, and you can read more about that in the forums that are available online, then I recommend paying the extra money. It's not really that much more, $700 something for me personally. So I bucked up. I made sure I got a model that had that. So if I'm going on a road trip, if I find a fast charger, I can utilize that. Just to recap, make sure you read up on how EVs work. You're going to have to plan trips ahead of time if you want to take this thing long distance that are longer than what your vehicle's charge is going to have. Remember, turning on air conditioning is going to lower the amount of range you have because of how much extra juice it takes from your battery. How you drive the car, how cold it is outside, how hot it is outside. Those are things to consider. Really do your reading on them before you purchase one of these cars. And for me, I did it as an add-on car. This is my third car in the household. Me and my wife each have an ICE vehicle. I use my Honda Pilot still when I go on long road trips because I want to pack a lot of stuff in my car. And I don't want to have to deal with running out of range on my electric vehicle. Also, I don't want to have to add and pay all this extra money for me personally for a hitch, for a roof rack, all these extra accessories. I already have all them on my Honda Pilot. For me, I didn't want to have to deal with that. So I drive this to work every day. This thing is amazing. It only cost me $8 a week. It was costing me $50 a week in gas in my Honda Pilot. Now I pay $8 a week in electricity for me personally to be able to drive back and forth to work. And I drive a little more than 40 miles every day in my commute to work. So overall, it's a great car. The negative is the seat is terrible. It's thin. It's no structure to the seat. The padding is terrible. You might want to think about the possibility of having to get it reupholstered. If that's a deal breaker for you, wait for the newer models. There's a lot of people complaining and writing feedback back to Chevy about this. I took a lot of surveys where I mentioned that in the surveys. Other than that, the technology in the car is great. It's lacking the adaptive cruise control. There's no adaptive cruise control available in this car. There's no front end crash avoidance, I don't believe, where auto brakes for you. I don't think that's available in this car. But all the features that are available in the car have been very surprising to me, and I love the way it drives. I highly recommend it. I would buy it again. And for being a first really model that Chevy put out that is completely dedicated to a full electric vehicle, this thing is amazing. It blew it out of water. It really raised Chevy's stock in my mind. And if I ever in the future get a Tesla, I'll be able to compare it to that, but I don't have one right now. So for the time being, for me, this is the best one out of all the research that I did, and I love the car. So I hope you enjoyed this video and got some useful information out of it.